I basically have the box score to go off of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's pretty much all you need to know.
I basically have the box score to go.
All right.
That's not what I want.
We live.
Just two Cougar fans chilling.
Yeah. All right. Are you ready?
Up? Yeah.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Around the 412. We are part of allsteelers.com and proudly presented by Crowworthy, where winners are serving winners coast to coast with sports, gambling, fantasy, and more. You can follow Crowworthy at Crowworthy on Twitter, and you can visit us at crowworthy.com. You can also check out the Crowworthy Pittsburgh City page for podcasts just like this one, blogs, fantasy, and more. I'm Tyler, and with me as always is Smitty. It's been a while since we've done the NFL show.
I really felt the energy in that intro.
Yeah, which is the complete opposite of how I feel. Honestly, the reason I joined you so late is because I was sleeping.
Oh, wow.
I came home from work and I fell asleep. And then my dad came into my room, asked me if I wanted a grilled cheese. And that's why I was like, okay, good thing you did that because I would have just passed out. But here we are.
Here we are. And yes, as you mentioned, it has been a while. The last time we talked was before the Jaguars games. The Steelers have actually played 2 games since the last time that we had a Steelers-based episode. We obviously did have our interview with Philip Evans last Tuesday. You can go back and watch that. Obviously, we wish all of the listeners and viewers had a happy Thanksgiving as well. But yeah, it's been a while since we got to talk about the Steelers. A lot has happened. We have 2 more wins under our belt, still at 0 losses. But it hasn't been all pretty, and we will get into that as soon as we tell you about one of our sponsors, which is Manscaped. So support for Around the 412 comes from Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. So this is going to be a new ad read, so I hope you guys are ready for this. Jingle balls to the walls, fellas. Listen up. Untrimmed pubes are a thing of the past. It's time to gear up and get yourself the gift of shaving this holiday season. I am talking about the Manscaped Perfect Package 3.0. Tyler, I don't know if you have the things on hand like you normally do, but he normally breaks out. Yep, he's grabbing them right now. For everybody that's listening, you're not going to see them, but if you're watching, this is why you have to come into the YouTube.
I had to go get them because, I actually use them. They don't just sit on my desk.
Right. So anyway, he has the toner and the deodorant in his hand. We talk about them all the time. But obviously, the big thing that they have right now is the Lawnmower 3.0, which is advanced skin-safe technology trimmer. Cuts on – I didn't even notice this word. Cuts on your nuts. It's also waterproof, so you can use it in the shower. The charger comes with an LED light. It's USB. Man, going through this stuff, I just realized we need some more of their products, I think.
Oh, dude, I'm running out.
I'm
running.
But anyway, the Perfect Package 3.0 comes with that trimmer I just talked about, as well as the Crop Preserver, which is the anti-chafing ball deodorant and moisturizer. You already put deodorant in your armpits. Why not start putting it down there as well? All the products smell good. The manly scent is attractive and will set the mood if you know what I mean. The Perfect Package 3.0 also comes with a pair of Manscaped boxers that will keep your junk feeling fresh all day. It's time to upgrade those overused pair of boxers with Manscaped. 'Tis the season to Manscaped, so get yourself, your dad, your brother, and friends all the best gift, which is the Manscaped Perfect Package 3.0. And you can get 20% off all the great products that you can find at manscaped.com when you use the code 412 at checkout. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code 412 at checkout at manscaped.com. Your balls will thank you, and so will Around the 412.
You can't beat it, folks. You truly can't. And I can't believe that the word nuts made you giggle like that.
It's because I hadn't read that before.
Just caught you off guard a little bit.
Yeah.
Even though balls is plastered all over their stuff. They believe me, guys, they're not shy about what they're going for.
No. They have a very specific brand and they stick to it.
Although
anyway,
you mentioned that the ball deodorant. I wish they had like normal deodorant too, like like stick deodorant, because I would use that.
Yeah, that made me think of it as I was reading that as well. I thought the same thing.
Yeah, I've thought of that for the past like couple months. Like, I wonder if there's like a reason they haven't done it, but I really hope they do eventually.
Maybe we should let them know. Let them know it's something that people would enjoy.
Yeah, because I mean they all smell great. So
okay, so let's get down to business. It's December. It's time for the Steelers to unleash hell. They're 1-0 in December, but it wasn't pretty. We're still undefeated, but the question is, how did we get here? You go back and look through some of these games. I know that you mentioned right before we start recording, due to the time that the game was played yesterday, you didn't get to see a whole lot of it. You were looking at the box score, stuff like that. I can tell you didn't miss much of a performance. And I think that it's pretty telling when you see Mike Tomlin talk about the game the way that he did, as well as Ben Roethlisberger, shouldering a lot of the blame. But let's be honest, for anybody that watched the game, they can tell you that he should not have been shouldering a lot of I mean, he should because he's the quarterback. He shouldn't have had to shoulder that blame. I mean, the guy had, I think, somewhere between 15, I think he was like 34, 51 passing. But they had 8 drops.
36 of 51.
What's that?
36 of 51.
36 of 51. So 2 more completions than I even thought that he had. 36 of 51, but that's including 8 drops that the guys had. And that depends, that number could be higher or lower depending on, what you consider a drop. But 8 drops were registered to the team, including several by Deontay Johnson and several by Eric Ebron. Now, I mean, with both those guys, we kind of know that that's the case. It's the highs and the lows, and you have to take that because of, you'll take the highs because, you'll take the lows because you know what the highs are. The guy that's been kind of frustrating for me to watch in contested catch situations, honestly, is Chase Claypool. And people might be surprised by that, but this is a guy that we were talking about coming out of college. He turns those 50-50 balls into 80-20s. And in contested catches, he hasn't been, all that great. He hasn't been coming down with the ball at the rate that we thought he would be. I don't know if you can speak to that as well, but there was a touchdown, what would have been a touchdown that Ben threw to him on a little slant. Marlon Humphrey did get his hand in there and kind of break it up, but it's a ball that Chase Claypool, especially in Marlon Humphrey, one of the best corners in football, by the way. But just looking at the play, it's a ball that Chase Claypool, I think, should have had. And I don't know if you saw that play or... Do
you know what quarter it was in?
I think it was the first quarter, I believe.
Oh, then I didn't see the play.
Okay. I didn't know if you went back and watched anything or...
No, I haven't really... I watched the highlights of the game, so I saw what was highlighted in the first quarter, but I wasn't highlighted, so I did not see that play. I literally only saw like the last quarter of that game, guys. I was at work the whole time, so... Okay.
Yeah, I mean, honestly... to take a step back from the Jaguars game, I don't think that there's a whole lot to go based off of there. Deontay had 2 consecutive 100-yard games, with that being the second one after, his performance against Cincinnati. I thought ran the ball actually pretty well, just didn't do it a ton. The defense was obviously tremendous. A little slow out of the gate, and that's what we've come to expect. That's kind of the norm, whether it should be or not. So yeah, not a whole lot, I don't think, to take away from that game. But this Ravens game was very ugly, and in all 3 facets of the game, really. We knew that they were going to run the ball, yet they were still able to do it effectively, similar to the first time out against them. We let RG3 escape the pocket a couple times and break off some runs. They had 2 third down and long plays that went for first downs, where that should never happen, where they're running the ball. So that Ray McCloud fumbles a punt that puts the Ravens in prime scoring position.
I fully do not understand.
I mean, the guy's right in front of him.
Yeah, it's one thing if there's a guy on your team that's blocking for you in front of you, or if the guy's 10 yards from you, but he's literally like in your face and you didn't fair catch it. I don't understand that. And we've seen like Ray, like he does take risks when it comes to catching the ball and like trying to get some part of the positive yardage out of it. That one just seemed foolish to me.
Yeah, the guy's completely unblocked, standing right in front of him. Nothing's going to happen from that. And then Boswell misses a kick on an extra point for the second week in a row. Then obviously the offense, I just talked about it. The big thing is just the drops. I thought Ben was relatively accurate for most of the part. I think I saw a stat that he actually hit his target on 83% of passes, which was his second highest of the season. So the ball was getting to these guys. They just weren't catching it. They ran the ball, I thought, decently. I think Benny Snell averaged just under 4 yards per carry. But in total, Benny Snell had a pretty solid day. I think he had like 96 total yards. Eric Ebron started off very well. I think he had 5 catches in the first quarter. Deontay Johnson still targeted a lot. Juju had, I think, 8 catches, but only like 38 yards. He caught the only offensive touchdown. A day to forget, in my opinion, from Chase Claypool. James Washington not heavily involved in the game script, but comes up with arguably the biggest play of the day on a ball where when it's thrown, I'm thinking, what is Ben seeing? Because it was just like a lollipop to the middle of everybody.
Right.
But James Washington's the one that comes down with it, and he trusted him, and he said that. So a day to forget, in my opinion, all the way around. And the good thing is they got a short week and aren't going to watch tape on this game, and they already said that. Like, Ben's going to watch himself. The guys can do it individually. But as a team, when you have a short week like this, that's not even part of like their preparation. They're not going to look at any of this film.
Yeah, just to speak to some of the individual guys, I'll start with Betty Snell. I did like the way, though I saw him run the ball, at least in the highlights I did see. He looked like he was doing well. When it comes to the receivers, I did see clips of drops that Ebron and Deontay had, and it seems like there's guys, like you said, that they make these big plays, but then they make these dumb mistakes, and it leads to the question, like, why? Especially like Deontay. I feel like him more so than like Ebron. Every single week, whether it's drops, falling down, running the wrong route, I feel like he's doing something stupid. And I mean, he came out today and said that he can be better, and he knows that. I'm like, well, okay, show it. We're going into like what, week 12 or week 13?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to clean up these mistakes, especially when we're getting towards playoff time. But and then Juju, from what I saw from him, I feel like even though he didn't have a ton of yardage totals, I feel like his were more of the gritty yards again. I did see some yards after the catch, him carrying guys after the catch. So
stiff arm of 10 yards.
Yeah. So even though his yardage isn't high, he did have the touchdown. I'm still impressed with what he's been doing.
Yeah, I think that the question and the reason that I put this on here is because how concerned are we with the drops carrying over? Because, if it's just a 1 week thing and you get out of there with a win, that's fine. You just hope that it's cleaned up before playing against Washington, who, by the way, is a very good defense. I don't think that people talk about that defense enough. I understand that they're not that great on offense. They really only have one receiver. They don't have a quarterback that can stretch the field. They have a very good running back, though, and our run defense has not been great as of late. Hopefully Stephon Tuitt's able to come back and help out in that area. But Washington's defense definitely deserves a ton of credit. And I'm starting to, I'm not going to say worry, but I see certain holes in this team that need cleaned up. And that's why I'll go back to saying, I understand why people think that Kansas City is the best team in football. Because you watch the Steelers week in and week out, they get off to slow starts. They have these, mental lapses at times on both offense and defense. I'm not going to, there are kickers that have been way worse than Chris Boswell this year, but all of a sudden, back-to-back weeks now where he's missed an extra point. There's areas in each part of the game, offense, defense, and special teams, where the team just hasn't been up to snuff the last couple weeks. And, so again, I still think they're one of the best teams in football. Maybe they are the best team in football, but I don't have an issue if people think it's Kansas City.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what do you think when people say that they are the worst 11-0 team they've ever seen?
Okay, there's only been a dozen 11-0 teams anyway. So I'm not going to go back and look at all those 11-0 teams and see and go down through their schedule and see who they played and how much they beat them by. All I know is this year, the Steelers have played 4 teams over 500. They're 4-0 in those games, and they've won by 12 points per game against them. The Chiefs have played 5 games against teams over 500. They are 4-1, and they've won by an average margin of 5 points per game against those teams. So I don't understand, like, again, if you would say Kansas City is the best team in football, that's fine, but it's not like the margin is super, big between the two, at least in my opinion. And for people that are going to say, I see it all. Even Ryan Clark, who, played with the Steelers, says there's no chance that the Steelers beat Kansas City. I think that's ridiculous because I think that they could definitely beat Kansas City. I think that, any given Sunday is what they say, right? Especially when it comes to playoffs. Did any of these people have the Tennessee Titans in the AFC Championship last year? No. All the talk was about the Baltimore Ravens, who came in at 4-2. So the Steelers don't need to be the best team in football right now. Even if they were undefeated, it wouldn't matter to me. They could have a couple of losses, and I still would think that they're a contender. There's something very special going on in Pittsburgh, and I don't see how anybody could deny that. Regardless of what the record is, regardless of what the Chiefs' record is, whoever you think the best football team is in the NFL right now, the Steelers are definitely in that conversation.
Yeah, the only problem I have with people bringing up the Chiefs, and I have no problem with them saying they're the best team. It's just the fact that no one ever brings up their close games. They always want to bring the Steelers.
Almost lost to the
But,
Panthers.
yeah,
Almost
they
lost
almost
to
lost
the
to
Chargers.
Panthers and Chargers. No one brings that
and did lose to the
up.
Raiders.
They did lose to the Raiders. No, I don't think the Raiders are a terrible team, but they lost to the Raiders once, and they had a very close game the second time either.
So they lost to the Raiders, who just got blown out.
Sorry, I was just saying, I just don't see how people don't bring up their losses or close games, but it's easy to bring up the Steelers. And it's probably just because the Steelers don't have a blemish.
We just saw the Raiders, who are the only team that beat KC, lose by 37 points to the Atlanta Falcons. Now, granted, the Falcons have been a completely different team under Raheem Morris, who deserves consideration to be their next head coach and get that interim strip from his title, because he's been fantastic there. Atlanta's played a lot better since he became their head coach, and they got rid of Dan Quinn. The point that I'm trying to make, though, is, I mean, if you're going to go back and nitpick the Steelers' schedule, which I don't know how you do it 11-0. I mean, they've played over a third of the league, and they haven't lost yet. So, but anyway, going back to my point is, if you really want to nitpick that, you can go into the Kansas City schedule and nitpick what they've done as well. You can do that with anybody. And and Steeler fans actually started to do that. I saw today, with the Browns fans starting to chirp. They went through the Browns schedule with the Chiefs. Again, that's where I got that stat from about them only beating teams over 500 by 5 points per game, where the Steelers are doing it at 12 points per game. So again, if you think the Chiefs are the best team in football, that's completely fine. If that game were happening next week, not picking with my heart, picked with my mind, maybe I do take the Chiefs in that game. But again, it's not out of the realm of possibility for the Steelers to win that game. I also think the Titans are in the conversation. I think that the Bills are in that conversation. What I will say is I absolutely think that 3 of the best 4 or 5 teams are in the AFC, and I think that the Super Bowl champion is coming out of the AFC.
I agree. I mean, we've talked about it for the last month. The NFC is just too inconsistent for me. And actually, whenever it came to describing the Steelers a few weeks ago, whenever I think Donnie had us describe them in one word, I just said inconsistent. That I don't think they are the worst 11-0 team of all time. I mean, maybe they are. I have no idea. I'm not going to look at the other undefeated teams. But I just think that the Steelers week to week vary in how they play. Like the Jacksonville game, I get it. It's Jacksonville. But there was no reason they showed that they would lose that game, which a lot of Steeler fans were worried about because, I mean, they tend to play down to their competition a lot of times. But then when it comes to games like this past one, very inconsistent, very poor. I mean, you could probably argue it's their worst game of the season, at least offensively. Defensively, I mean, the whole way around. So I would just describe this team as inconsistent. I don't think they're bad. Anybody that thinks they're bad, I just think he's a moron. I mean, that's flat out. I can't comprehend that whatsoever.
Here's what I keep coming back to, and we're running out of time, so maybe it's just not going to happen. But I still don't think that we've seen the best version of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, maybe that's not a great thing, but I'm looking at it as maybe we do see the best version of the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs. And that's when it matters. If they lost these last 5 games, they're still going to be in the playoffs. That's when they got to get hot. That's not going to happen. But just throwing it out there. But yeah, I don't know. I understand people not seeing enough from the Steelers week in and week out to consider them the best team in football. But with how many people are underrating them, I don't see how people can consider them overrated anymore. How are they not underrated at this point with how many people think that they're overrated?
Well, my big thing too is that this is the NFL. It's not college football. Whenever people are saying you barely beat this team by so much, like you didn't blow out this team, I'm like, yeah, I mean, they're bad teams, but they're still like professional football
I think they're
teams.
still
like it's not college football where it's like, okay, Alabama is good, and if they play a team like, Pitt, they're just going to blow them out, and that's expected. And if they don't, then that's quite a question mark. The NFL, it doesn't matter by how much you win by. I mean, a win is a win in the NFL. There's no skill points, or there's no fancy points for like I don't even know what they call it. What do they call it whenever like you want to like win by a ton of points in college football? I don't even know.
I don't know.
I don't know. There's a term for it. Like it just basically makes you more impressive. And sure, it would be more impressive if the Steelers won by 40 every single game, but they don't have to because they're in the NFL and a win's a win. They're 11-0. They've won 11 games in a row. They've never done that before. Like you said, only a dozen do that or not. There's still one of a dozen teams to ever do that.
Yeah, and the thing is too, like people were talking about, not impressive or not beating teams that they should by enough points or whatever. They're 8-3 against the spread this year. So more times than not, they're covering the amount of points that they're being given. So, I mean, take that for what you will. I understand that we're talking about betting now as opposed to the actual game being played on the field. But most times out, 8 times out of 11, they've covered the amount of points that they've been given, which there's not many teams in the NFL that can say that.
Yeah, and how about Colin Cowherd today saying they're not Super Bowl contenders? Being 11-0, you're not a Super Bowl.
I didn't even listen to that. Like I saw the Twitter clip, or obviously, and I quote tweeted it or whatever, and I put out the clip of Joey Molinaro, but I didn't even listen to it. I have no idea what he actually said. Also, I think I lost you, so I'm gonna
saw the tweets that said that.
I paused the recording because I'm assuming I lost you. So YouTube's just going to be staring at us for a second here. Technical difficulties. Love 2020. Oh, I can see you now.
Can you see me now?
Yeah.
Hold on. My voice is very behind for you. So I'm going to Did you just stop the recording?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just making sure my internet is going to be better. I wish I had better internet. Okay, hopefully it's more stable now. I don't know.
You're lagging around on my screen.
Is my voice lagging though?
No.
Then that's what I care about. I mean, pictured. It's one. I'd rather my voice be okay, because there's nothing really I can control about it.
Okay. What was I saying?
I don't know. I started talking. I don't even know if you heard me.
Probably not. 8-3 against the spread. Colin Cowherd. Colin Cowherd. I didn't watch it. Okay. All right. 3-2.
Thanks, Rose. That's style points.
3, 2, 1. Yeah, I just don't care about what Colin Cowherd or anybody in the media says. I'm so sick of it. You can put whoever you want above them. Whether I don't see how anybody besides the Chiefs maybe could be above them in anybody's power rankings. But even so, they're still in the NFL's elite. And again, there's something special going on in Pittsburgh. And, we're going to talk about something here in a little bit. One of the topics that we have that might, I don't want to say derail it, but it puts a little bit of a damper on the rest of the season. But there's no denying what's going on in Pittsburgh right now. And to be 11-0, you don't get there by accident. You don't get there by locking into 11 wins in a row or getting the help of refs, whatever it might be. There's a reason that this team's 11-0. And I'll be honest, I think that a lot of it starts just with the guys in the locker room, not necessarily the football players. I just think that there's a better relationship with everybody in the locker room. They're more of a team than they have been the last couple years. We don't have any personalities that carry over onto the football field. Again, we know, Juju, he likes to have fun and stuff off the field, but that doesn't carry over, onto the football field as far as him having a diva personality. So, I think that first and foremost, there's just a bunch of guys that love playing football together, and that's the biggest reason that they're 11-0 is just because of their collective relationship that they have.
Yeah, I agree. This team is very tight knit. And two things that I thought of while you were talking. One, speaking of Juju, the TikTok thing, I saw people that didn't like his TikTok after the game. But if you look at that TikTok,
It was before.
his jersey's clean. That is
Yeah.
definitely before the game. And second, how much did the Pro Football Focus guys love when Ben threw that pick?
I don't know what he was doing on that, man. Like, I understand at the end of it, like, just throw it up and hope somebody catches it, like, give somebody a shot. But he had Derek, like, I understand it's Derek Watt. But, like, if you don't trust to throw the ball to Derek Watt, why is he on the field anyway? You had Derek Watt running a route on fourth down, but not Deontay Johnson or Juju Smith-Schuster. Like, what are we doing? What were we doing in the red zone yesterday? I mean, really on offense the entire game, but specifically to start this game in the red zone, what in the world was that?
I have no idea. I mean, like, this game just seemed, from what I saw and what I've looked at, it just seems like it was just a combined effort of sucking for the entire team.
Tomlin
Like,
actually used the word sucking, which was a little bit surprising to me.
did he?
Yeah, they said something about like what was happening in the red zone. He said us sucking.
Yeah, well, it was a combined effort with the players, the receivers not catching the balls, the play calling. It was a team effort to say.
When you brought up PFF, and I wonder, I mean, they're not going to, but it would be nice to see them take the amount of drops the Steelers had yesterday into consideration when assessing Ben's performance. Not that I care what their assessment
Probably
is.
not. Yeah,
but
and I don't even think we've talked about that on the show, how they just horribly rape Ben. And I don't know what they go by. Like, I
here's the
honestly,
thing.
okay.
And I'm probably going to turn this into a Twitter clip, and I'm going to be upset about it because I don't want to mention them on here. They don't deserve any type of airtime. But the thing that I'm curious about is that we don't have any highly rated players on offense yet. And I understand the points per game should come down a little bit, but going into yesterday's game, we're averaging just under 30 points per game, which was good enough for fourth in the league. How are we scoring that many points per game when we don't have any good players on offense?
Apparently, a lot of mediocrity. I don't know. I can't tell you. I mean, apparently we just have a lot of good players. We don't have a lot of great players.
But they're not even rated. They're not even near the top rated at their position. Anybody.
Right.
Even the offensive line, the highest rated guy we have is like 18th at their position. I'm pretty sure it's either Filer or Al Villanueva.
Oh, I mean, if Al is the highest rated player at his position, then something's wrong.
Okay, let's talk about Benny Snell a little bit because James Conner obviously put on the COVID list. Benny Snell gets the start. We did see Anthony McFarland mixed in a little bit, and I kind of liked what I saw from him. Curious as to why he didn't really see the field at all in the second half. I understand Benny Snell was running well, but I would have liked to have seen them, split out McFarland or something, get him a few touches, throwing him the ball. But Benny Snell, I thought, was pretty solid yesterday. He even had 3 catches out of the backfield, which is not typically part of his game, went over 30 yards in that area. But for me, it was the yards after contact because, again, it's another performance where the offensive line just was not run blocking well. Not much time for Benny Snell to, hit the holes. And guys were on him right away. So I thought he ran very well, all things considered. Again, taking into consideration the fact that the offensive line, in my opinion, wasn't blocking very well, and he was creating a lot for himself, despite, being a guy that doesn't have a ton of burst. All in all, I thought it was a solid day for Benny Snell.
I agree with you. He did well, and I did see a few of his runs. Like I said, missed a lot of the game, but I was able to see a lot of it. And yeah, I think he did well. And the one run, I think it was a catch from McFarland, actually, the long run that he had. And both of them looked well. I'm with you. I don't really know why they didn't really go to McFarland at all in the second half, but
he had one catch for 17 yards.
Yeah, I think that was probably the play that I saw him run. But yeah, Snell, I don't know why the Steelers haven't been using him more over the past, I don't know, 6 games or so. But I think when it comes down to rolling into the end of the season, it would be a smart move, especially with James Conner being on the COVID list. You want to take your time with him because he has had his past with health issues. So take time with him, and I think that Snell's a solid option for you. He does his job as long as he's not. I know we brought up earlier in this season that he needed to stop fumbling the football, which he hasn't done. So I was pleased with him this game, and I'm going to look forward to watching him going forward. I would like to see more of McFarland, though. I don't know why they only gave him 3 carries.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So I was gonna counter what you said, by saying that as opposed to Benny Snell, because I feel like Benny Snell kind of is what he is. He's gonna be like the short yardage goal line guy. I think that again yesterday we saw a little bit more from him than I personally expected. Outside of the tackles and in the receiving game, but that's not a trend that I think is going to continue. Hey, go ahead and prove me wrong because I hope it's the case because we're going to be a better football team if he does. But Anthony McFarland is the X factor to me in that running back room. We talked about it before. We know that like the skill set is there. It's just his body is working too fast right now, and his mind is not processing everything in front of him. As a runner, still yesterday just averaged 3 yards a carry. He had 3 carries, 9 yards. That's not going to get it done. But we saw the explosive play that he made receiving the ball to the backfield, and that's what I think he has. So those two together complementing each other, that's what we expect the backfield to be after this year, which is what I was going to say, why I think those two guys should get more run down the stretch here, because James Conner is not a guy that we expect to see in a Steelers uniform next year, at least as it stands right now. So you got to see what you have in these guys before you figure out, hey, we got to go running back in this round, in the 2021 draft, or, do we have to add a running back at all? Those things are going to have to be figured out down the stretch here. And that's why I think both those guys, but for me, more so Anthony McFarland needs to get more run down the stretch.
Yeah. And we've heard like they want James Conner to be healthy for the playoffs. And if that's truly what you want, you need to use these guys more. You can't have him be the bell cow because much as I love James Conner, he's been hurt quite a lot in his career. And I don't want that to happen to him over these last few games. So they should just start to work in Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland more and more into this offense, at least until the playoffs start, especially because you have games that I feel like are against lesser opponents that you shouldn't have to rely on James Conner only to move the football.
Right. But once you get to the playoffs, obviously you're going to be relying more so on James Conner. But I agree with you. In these next stretch of games to finish out the regular season, I think you really got to figure out what you have in these guys. Benny Snell has gotten an extended look now, even going back to last year as the number one running back. Is he the number one guy? I feel like if he's your number one, you need a guy that can complement him in the passing game. And hopefully Anthony McFarland's that guy. And you got to figure that out in these next stretch of games. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm a big believer in Anthony McFarland. Again, I just think that right now, his mind just isn't processing things the way that they need to at the NFL level. I think the skill set, the traits that he brings are absolutely there to be a contributor at the NFL level. So he's a guy that I'm super intrigued about, but just right now it's not there and he needs the reps in order to get there.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's not going to improve at all by just sitting on the bench.
Ken just popped in here. Do you think the Steelers will bring in a veteran to rotate in at outside linebacker? I think Highsmith will do well, just someone to help keep him fresh. Yeah, so the thing for me is obviously they got to bring in somebody, Jaron Elliott, who would be like the guy in line to take maybe the special team snaps, because we expect Highsmith and Ola to, get the bulk of the work now. It'll be interesting to see how those splits are divided up. You're talking about Highsmith having to make the jump from like an average of 13 snaps per game up to, Bud was playing between 50 to 60. So I don't think that he's going to shoulder all of that. You're going to have Ola mix in again if they bring in some type of veteran. But really, Highsmith was playing about 20 special team snaps. So you got to bring in a guy that can also play special teams, in my opinion. I'm not so sure. People are throwing out I know. I'm sure you saw today. James Harrison was getting seen by Dr. Bradley. James Harrison is 42 years old, hasn't played football in a couple seasons, and when he left the organization, did not leave on good terms. He didn't want to mentor TJ Watt and Bud Dupree. So I don't know why that's a thing. I really hope that it isn't a thing. And some of the other names to throw out there, just before you touch on this, if you wanted to, like Clay Matthews was thrown out there. Terrell Suggs was thrown out there. I think that they'd probably be better off poaching somebody from a practice squad or going, again, for a guy that's a little bit younger than any of those guys. I understand the veteran presence thing or whatever, but you're talking about a guy that I think you need to be a little bit more youthful, because you're talking about having to take on 20 plus special team snaps and maybe also be a contributor on defense. And I'm not sure that anybody at that age is going to be able to shoulder that workload.
Yeah, I don't think you really have to worry about getting a veteran presence. I mean, I guess for that position, you won't really have the veteran presence, but that's the defense of a whole. You still have Cam, you still have Vince. So I don't really get it. And I will say with James Harrison, I don't know why people are bringing him up. Like, when it comes to guys that you don't want in the locker room, we mentioned that earlier. I mean, I feel like he's a guy that would bring in a little bit of toxicity, especially the way he last left the organization. Maybe it was a troll, but who knows? So I'm with you. I would want a younger guy. I don't think you need to worry about an older guy. And when it comes to Highsmith, I think that they don't expect him to take all the reps. I just really don't see them doing that, like throwing him into the fire just like that. I think that's unfair to him. Maybe eventually, maybe come playoff time or towards the end of the season, he's becoming more of that role. But at least right now and for the first couple of games at this new position for him, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, and Ken just said don't want James back. And I don't know how, anybody that remembers what happened just a few seasons ago with his departure here could want him back. I understand everybody gets a second chance. Not all bridges are burnt. It could be amended, everything like that. But listen, this is the guys that we're talking about that he wouldn't mentor, they're still on the team. TJ Watt, the best player on the Pittsburgh Steelers, is the guy that he refused to mentor when he was here. Now he's going to come back and rotate in on that same defense with him. The biggest thing, as you and I just said, with the Steelers right now, why things are so special, is that locker room chemistry. Bringing a guy like James Harrison jeopardizes that. It's not worth the reward. I have no idea what that reward is. I don't think that it's much. So the risk that you're taking by bringing in a 42-year-old James Harrison, who didn't leave on good terms, will not get you the reward that some people, for whatever reason, think that it will.
And just because he can bench 500 pounds does not mean he's still good at football. Those things do not correlate.
Yeah. I mean, hey, listen, Kansas City's like the biggest the biggest threat to us, we feel like, in the AFC, and we know what this guy does to Eric Fisher. Maybe that's the reason people want to bring him back, just that one reason.
Maybe. I mean, for one game in the playoffs.
Possibly. Not even for sure that we would meet. Yeah. But it'd be hard for me to throw out some names. I know a former third-round pick, Ja'Kai Polite, was just let go. And he was actually linked to the Steelers at one point when he was coming out of the draft, but there's a reason that he went from a first-round pick to a third-round pick and now isn't even going to be on a team. And I think that has a lot to do with his off-field issues. I saw people throwing his name out there. I don't see that happening. I don't know, who they need to bring in. I'm sure they'll bring in somebody, but I think for the most part, and, Tomlin even said it himself, it's going to be our boy Alex Highsmith's time, opposite of TJ Watt.
Yeah, and I'm excited for him. I mean, from what we've seen from Highsmith, he's been very good so far. So I just think that he's going to get better and better as the time goes on.
I think the biggest thing with his mentality, and we talked about that, when he was on here, is he's going to be a guy that answers every single challenge that's brought up to him. Hey, we want you to just be a special teams guy for now. Okay. He excels with that. Start off the season. We want you to start, mixing in every once in a while on defense. He started doing that. Then he got an extended look in that Ravens game, made a mistake not dropping into coverage the way that he should have. Very next time that same play happens, he drops into coverage and intercepts a pass. So it's the mentality for me, and it's just the ability to process and make adjustments. For him he grabbed that iPad right after that mistake, saw what happened. Next time that it happened, he comes up with the play that he should have had the first time in his mind. So I absolutely think that he's a guy that's going to thrive on this defense. I'm excited to watch him. It's very unfortunate how he's getting the opportunity with the injury to Bud Dupree, but this is a guy that we expected to take over that starting role next year. Now that it's just, like I said, it's unfortunate, but now we're just getting an earlier look at him.
Yeah, and I think that the mindset of these players is also what plays into their locker room friendship and their cohesiveness, because I think similarly of Highsmith and UG3, like Ulysses Gilbert, who we had on our show, both of them said that they do not care what the role of them for themselves is on the team. They just want to win. They just want to do everything that they can to win. I feel like most of the players on this team have that mindset. So whenever the team is collectively in that mindset, it makes it a lot easier to leave the toxicity out of it and just play more for each other than for individual self.
Yeah, I think that, the biggest thing, one, is there's just a lot of great guys in the locker room right now, and we kind of touched on that already. I also think that there's a lot of realization, like, Ben's still playing at a very high level, but they know that, time is starting to tick He doesn't have that many years left. We got to try to win this thing now. And not that you're not trying to win it every year, but their window is right now. The defense that you have and with the quarterback that you have at his age, with the receiver group that you have, we know what the potential is. They just got to put it all together. All the pieces are there, even with the injuries that they've suffered, season-ending injuries to three guys now, three starters of this team, Zach Banner, Devin Bush, and Bud Dupree now. This team they've had their fair share of adversity, whether people want to admit it for 11-0 team or not. It's not like this team's been absolved of adversity or anything like that. So they've answered the challenges up to this point. It's going to be interesting to see how they do now. And again, with this latest thing with Bud Dupree, it's not just going to be one guy. There's going to be several guys contributing. But just as they have all year, it's going to be next man up, and we expect that they're going to be able to answer that bell.
Yeah, and it's a tall task replacing Bud. I mean, this dude's been a stud all year, and it's a continuation from last year. So it's really tough to see.
Think about it. Right? I mean, guys that you don't want to lose for a season. Ben Roethlisberger, TJ Watt. Who's number 3 after that?
I mean,
Bud's in that conversation along with Minkah.
Yeah, I would say you could argue Bud, Minkah, Cam, the way Tua's been playing Tua.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's definitely right up there.
I know that we sometimes harp on him, but I mean, even Al, because your left tackle, that's not, if you lose a left tackle and have to put a guy that's never played left tackle, that's a huge ask. So, I know that we harp on him, but it's at least stability at that position. But yeah, I think that Bud's absolutely in that conversation. And now that's a guy that we've lost for the rest of the year. So,
yeah. And I think one way that they're going to miss Bud Dupree more so than just the passing or the pass rush, because everybody knows how good of a pass rusher he has been. Is what I've noticed on running plays is how quickly he crashes down on the running back.
I think I mean, this might be a little bit of a hot take. I think he might be better against the run than TJ is.
I mean, I don't blame you. I watch him on run plays, and he is so fast to get to the running back. And I know we want to credit the defensive line as a whole, but I mean, maintaining the outside control is the outside linebacker's job, which he does. But then when the run is on the inside, he gets down there so quickly, and I feel like we're going to miss that. I mean, we don't know. Maybe Highsmith can do something similar, but we haven't really seen him have to be in that situation yet. So I'm hoping that he can produce something similar to what he's been doing. But that's just something that I was thinking about when we were going to be talking about Bud, is like, that's one thing I know that we're going to miss besides his pass rush, is him crashing down on the running back.
And I think on the reverse side of that, with what you're getting with Highsmith, he might be a little bit better in pass coverage when they do drop back in coverage than what we've seen from Bud. So, I mean, again, we're going to see, but that's the thing, is we knew what we had in Bud was a very special player who helped create turnovers, was part of the best pass rush in football. Now, all of a sudden, opposite of TJ Watt, it becomes a little bit of a question mark, and we have all the faith in the world in Alex Highsmith, but, that doesn't mean that it's 100% we can put a stamp on it. He's got to go out and answer those questions now.
It's pretty crazy that this defense has lost Devin Bush and now Bud Dupree.
I know.
And they're still going to be one of the best defenses in the NFL despite that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, look at the way Robert Spillane has taken over for Devin Bush in his absence. Hopefully Alex Highsmith can do something similar for Bud.
Yeah. I mean, again, they're not able to replace those players. And that's why I think that you got to start. I understand how much talent's on this defense. But, Keith Butler, for as much as, as we couldn't stand him a couple years ago, I think he deserves a little bit of credit for what we're seeing happen, even with the loss of some of these guys. We know that he's always good with the linebackers. Even if we would have gotten somebody else in here as a defensive coordinator, we would have wanted him to continue to coach the linebackers. But I think that he deserves a little bit of credit now for having to overcome the loss of these guys. And we'll see, how they answer the bell of losing Bud Dupree now, but losing Devin Bush, your quarterback of a defense, to have the defense still playing at as high of a level as they have. I mean, I think he definitely deserves at least some credit. It doesn't deserve to be on the chopping block like he was back in 2018.
I agree with you. I think that this defense has definitely come a long way from what it was, say, in 2017, 18. I mean, we always said, like, imagine if we had this defense and like the 2017 offense. I mean, I'll take the offense we have now for sure, but it's for the past decade, it's never really clicked at the same time. And he deserves credit for what he's done with this defense.
Right. Okay. So last thing we have on here before, like I put on Twitter, every week we're just going to leave it open to you guys to end the show the last couple minutes to send in some questions, whether it be through DM or email, and we'll answer them. But the last thing before we do that, I just wanted to look ahead to the rest of the schedule. So they got a short week before playing Washington Monday night. Then they'll have another short week before going to Buffalo for Sunday Night Football. Monday Night Football against the Cincinnati Bengals. The following Sunday, they play the Colts, and then they wrap up with the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland. So, I mean, I think if you feel like you're a believer in that Washington's a pretty solid team, they're a team that could still win that division. I mean, they got 4 tough games out of 5 here, with the only one being that Monday night game in Cincinnati. You feel like you can pretty much guarantee a win there.
Yeah, with Joe Burrow out, I just don't see there's any way that's close.
So you look at those other 4 games. I mean, I don't know if you're looking ahead here. Who do you think is going to be the toughest game? Well, I know what your answer is going to be here, but still, just for the sake of asking the question, what do you think is the toughest game left on the schedule?
I feel like it has to be at Buffalo. Yeah. It's a good team. Buffalo's a good team. You're on the road, and it's in the winter in Buffalo. I just think there's a lot of factors that go against you for this game. So that would be my pick. I think that Indianapolis is a sneaky tough game.
Depends on how the defense plays that day. I mean, they've been so up and down on that side of the football.
Exactly. I like sometimes Indianapolis looks like a world beater, and the other times they just look like Phillip Rivers from last year all over again.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with you. I think at least 4 out of these 5 games are tough. And I mean, maybe with that Cleveland game, we get to that game and we don't even have to worry about whether we win or lose that game. We might have to, we might get to sit our starters. I mean, depends on where they want to go for that number 1 seed and what Kansas City does, what we do the rest of the way. But I also think this upcoming game with Washington, I agree with you. Their defense is a lot better than a lot of people want to give them credit for. Antonio Gibson's a really good running back. There's a lot to like on Washington, even though they still have pieces that they need to be a good team again. So, like you said, the only game that is for sure just like a automatic W, I feel like, is Cincinnati. Everything else, I could see a possibility of how the Steelers can lose that game.
Yeah, I think even, you looked at that last game with Cleveland and assuming that we even, we have to play that game. Say Kansas City hasn't lost, we have to win to secure that number 1 seed. Cleveland is a team that does what they do better than anybody else. They run the football. And right now, with the way that the Steelers aren't, stopping the run, that's a game that concerns me for sure. I mean, you got to create a situation like that game against them earlier in the season where Baker Mayfield has to be throwing pretty much the entire game because they're playing catch up by 3 possessions. You got to do that again, because if Cleveland can get in a position to run the ball the entire game, I think the Steelers might be in a little bit of trouble. And granted, the issues against the run have been because when's the last time that we saw like a healthy Tuitt and Alualu on the same field for an extended period of time? So I think having both those guys in the lineup is huge to stopping the run. And again, that game might not end up meaning anything. We have to wait and see what happens with us and with Kansas City. They got 2 tough games coming up. Not this week. They play Denver on Sunday Night Football. Then they play Miami and New Orleans the following 2 weeks. So would love to see Kansas City take at least 1 loss in those 2 games. Also, I said it on the fantasy show, not here, and I just realized it. Going back to Cleveland, this might be a little bit of a hot take as well. Mike Tomlin is obviously my head coach of the year right now. Kevin Stefanski is probably number 2 for me.
Really?
And it was Brian Flores before they just lost their last game out, or was it 2 weeks ago that they lost? Either 2 weeks ago or this last game out when they lost, I moved Stefanski ahead of Brian Flores. I mean, to have that type of turnaround they have after losing Odell Beckham Jr. as well, missing Nick Chubb for as long as they had missed him. I mean, I just think that they're a really good football team at what they do. And Kevin Stefanski's, been the biggest reason. I mean, look at last year's roster to this year's roster. What's really different?
Okay, so I guess you kind of answered my question with that. I was going to ask, since so many people want to talk about whether the Steelers are contenders or pretenders at 11-0, at 8-3, do you believe in this Browns team? Like, do you think they're an actual good team?
I think they're good. I think they're a playoff team. At the
Yeah.
same time, I don't think that they're necessarily. If Baker Mayfield has to win a game for them, they're not. It's not going to happen. The problem with them is I think that they're a really good team. They also lack a really good player at the most important position in football. So I think that they're a borderline playoff team. I do think they'll get in the playoffs, especially because we have that extra playoff spot. But I don't think that they'll have much success in the playoffs due to them not having a very good player again at the most important position.
I know the records say otherwise. Do you think they're better than Baltimore?
No, I'll take a healthy Baltimore against a healthy Cleveland team.
Okay,
I would.
I would too. Even though the records don't say that.
Now the problem with Baltimore is where they're at right now. And I understand Lamar can come back against Dallas, but with where they're at 6-5, are they in too big of a hole right now to get out of?
I don't even know. Like, what is the playoff picture? I mean, so you have the Bills, Steelers, Titans, and Chiefs all leading their divisions, and then you have the Browns would be the first wild card,
right?
And then the Dolphins and Colts would be the other two.
Yeah.
So the Ravens are tied with the Raiders. So they need some help, I feel like, to get into the playoffs. It's just crazy to think about it going into the year. I thought they were
need help,
a playoff
and
team, if not going to win the division. So
I don't know that they have the leeway to lose another game, is what I'm saying.
Oh, I mean, think about it this way. Even if the Steelers lost their next 5 games and the Ravens won their next 5 games, the Steelers and the Ravens would be tied record-wise, and the Steelers would have the tiebreaker.
Oh, yeah, we saw that yesterday, that they eliminated them from possibility of winning the AFC North. So
yeah, it's crazy.
The Steelers could clinch this week with a win, and they'll clinch the division if Tennessee beats Cleveland. That's the one game this week that I'm really looking forward to, Tennessee and Cleveland.
I do not know which episode it was on. I think it might have been on the episode after Kansas City beat Baltimore, but I called the Steelers sweeping the Ravens this year, and they swept them yesterday. Just wanted to bring that up.
Was it? I thought that it might have been even on when we did our predictions with Hunter on here. You might have said
it might have been. I can't remember for sure. I know for sure I said that the Steelers would win the division by at least 2 games. When we had Hunter on, but I'm not sure if I said we're going to sweep the Ravens on that show or if it was after the loss to Kansas City. I actually think it was the show with Hunter.
Do you know what the Ravens' remaining schedule is, though? I'm looking at it right now.
Is it a lot of trash?
Yeah. Dallas, Cleveland, Jacksonville, the Giants, and then Cincinnati to finish.
Okay, so maybe they'll finish 11-5.
But listen, I'm excited for them in Cleveland just because I don't know where Baltimore is going to be at health wise. I said, healthy versus healthy. I'll take Baltimore, but is Baltimore going to be healthy for this game?
We don't know. Who would we want to win that game?
Baltimore.
I guess so. Yeah.
I mean, unless Cleveland well, if Cleveland loses Tennessee this week, I don't care. That's going to be a game where I wish that they can tie. That's best case scenario. Just have them tie.
So do we have to win 2 more games to clinch the division?
No. If we win and Cincinnati loses, we clinch on Sunday.
Oh, do we? It doesn't matter what Cleveland does?
We play Monday, so we wouldn't clinch on Monday, but.
Okay. Also, another thing about that Cleveland game, January 3rd at Cleveland. I don't know what the weather's going to be like. It's obviously a month from today, but if you have to play your starters to try to get the number 1 seed, depending on what the weather's like, you might have to be in a run game that whole game. You might not be able to pass the ball that great, which is going to suck because, like you said, Cleveland dominates at running the ball, especially when you have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. That's just kind of unfair.
I really hope Nick Chubb leaves there and they don't pay him and he loses in free agency.
Wouldn't that be nice?
It's kind of a win-win though. Either they paid a running back or he's not on the Browns anymore. So.
Yeah, I guess for those of you listening to that, Smitty and I don't really like paying running backs money. So.
The Chargers got a really good deal with Austin Eckler. Like, I can stomach that. And again, a guy like Christian McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara that does everything out of the backfield that those guys do. Although Kamara's not doing that out of the backfield.
They're not. I wouldn't say they're running backs. Like, they're not.
Yeah, they're just really good football players.
Yeah.
Exactly. but yeah, like a true running back, I'm not for it because the shelf life is too little and it sucks for them. But hey, that's just my opinion. And a lot of teams have started to follow that, by the way. So
Would you pay Derrick Henry?
no.
Because no, okay. I was curious because he is as true of a true running back as they come, and he's the best one at it. So I didn't know if you'd pay him.
Well, so the money wouldn't be necessarily an issue for me. It's the years.
Yeah. So you wouldn't give him like a 5-year deal.
And I think isn't that what they gave him?
I believe so. Yeah. That's why I asked you.
Yeah. I mean, unless it's pretty much all the money being paid in the first 3 years, and then you can cut ties after that for pretty much nothing guaranteed, then maybe, you just attach those 2 years just in case he still really is producing at a high level. But, and granted, he is, an anomaly guy. He's a freak of nature. And, he probably very well still be running the same way he is now in 3 years. But it's my philosophy. And, we've seen it play out too many times for me to think otherwise.
Zeke was your guy. He's an Ohio State guy, and you wouldn't have given him that contract. So
$90 million. They gave him $90 million before paying Dak.
True. They must have known.
And that's why the Cowboys are the Cowboys. But getting back to the point, yeah, I completely agree with you. I think Buffalo is the toughest game remaining on their schedule. I don't know how we got so off topic on that, but Buffalo is the toughest game remaining on their schedule. But I do think that 4 of these games will be tough tasks for the team, and they better be ready to go, clean up these drops on offense, be able to stop the run on defense, and play a clean game on special teams.
The Steelers are favored by 8 against Washington, by the way.
That sounds about right. I can see that. I'm glad that it's not any higher because I think that'd be, getting into that territory of considering it a trap game.
I mean, I think you could consider it a trap, or not necessarily a trap game, just a tough game overall. Not that the Steelers are going to be trapped and lose this game. Just I feel like a lot of Steeler fans might overlook the Washington football team. They don't really know what is on their team, and it's a lot of solid players.
Yeah. Okay. So again, like we're going to start doing, wrapping up the show just with some questions you guys send in via DM or email. So, hey guys, love the show and the social media coverage of the team. Just sending a question for the show. With the loss of Bud, young guys having to step up to fill the void is obvious. And I see a lot of Steeler Nation talking about Highsmith, which is great. Can't wait to see what he can do. But I think a lot of people are forgetting about Ola and what he can do. I guess my question here is if you guys could touch on what his new role could be and what impact he can make here in the near future. Thanks, boys. Keep up the good work. And what is the possibility of bringing a veteran free agent edge rusher to help fill the void, such as Cam Wake, Clay Matthews, Nigel Bradham, etc.? So we did kind of touch on this a little bit already. Granted, not necessarily Ola's impact as much. And he's been a huge contributor on special teams. Obviously, he's forced a couple fumbles on special teams this year. We haven't seen him mix into that edge rotation quite as much. Alex Highsmith kind of carved out that role for himself as the third guy in behind TJ and Bud, and I think that's kind of where Ola will be now. Granted, he'll play a few more snaps than Highsmith was before Bud, but it's going to be TJ and Highsmith with a little bit of Ola mixed in. I think he still plays his regular amount of special team snaps, and you see him maybe play like 12 to 15 defensive snaps a game, something like that. I really think, though, we're going to see Highsmith immediately play like 35, 40, something like that.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I'm looking at Ola's snaps right now, and special team snaps, it looks like he averages around like 70, a little above 70% of the special team snaps. Mm-hmm. That'll probably stay the same. If not, maybe increase a little more, taking over for what Highsmith might do, depending on how they want to handle that situation with him. But I agree with you on the defensive snaps. So this past week he was on for 1 snap, but then the previous weeks he was on for 13 and 10. I think you could see something like that, maybe bump on a little bit more work as well. Like you said, in that mid-teens range would probably be good for him. And like we did touch on bringing in a veteran guy.
Granted, I didn't even consider Cam Wake or Nigel Bradham. I mean, I don't know if Cam Wake has anything left. Nigel Bradham was on a practice squad. I mean, I think that the way to go is probably poaching a younger guy off of a practice squad. There's probably not anybody in the street that I think is going to come in and be a contributor for this team in the way that I think they'll need to be, talking about taking over, 20 or so special team snaps and then maybe like 5 to 8 defensive snaps, something like that. So
Yeah,
there's not really a name out there that interests me right now.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't think of anybody. I'd really have to do a lot of research if I wanted to come up with names.
Okay, and then Heather came in. Question for the show: how did you think JC did at center? And if Pouncey is out again, how do you see the O-line doing against Washington's D-line? So I got to give him credit first and foremost for stepping in at such short notice. And I would say that there were a couple times where he missed his assignment, if you will, and it was pretty noticeable. But at the same time, I think, first and foremost, you just got to tip your cap to the guy for stepping in and not playing like egregiously bad on such short notice. I don't think that he looked, in my opinion, like out of place by any means. Again, I haven't been too high on the play of the offensive line as a whole. So I don't think that he did anything to show that he's not capable of being the backup center to Pouncey. I really hope that Pouncey is able to come back quick. With such short notice going into Washington just on Monday, I'm not sure that Pouncey is going to be available for that game. So we very well could see the same offensive line with J.C. Hassenauer starting at center again. And that's going to be another tall task because, again, Washington's defense, specifically that defensive line, is one of the better ones in football. So it's going to be a tall task. But at least you can look at this positively. He's going to have the preparation beforehand, which he really didn't get this week leading up to the ball.
That's what I was going to bring up. He's at least going to know if he's the starter or not, and he could do reps with that first team. And with this being his first start, I don't think he did terrible. Like you said, there were plays that you noticed he missed an assignment, but I mean that's just some growing pains as a guy from that's a first-time starter.
How many times do we see a guy make his first start or get his first action in the NFL, and there's a bad snap leading to a fumble? Like, at least we didn't see that yesterday.
Right.
So, again, it wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible.
Listen, my opinion. Not everybody's going to be Kevin Dotson when they come in. Okay? So,
hey, if we're holding them to that standard, that's going to be a tough bar to reach. I believe we had at least one more. I think this one might have just been tweeted at us though. I'd like to know why we paid Derek Watt and refused to use him. LMAO.
That beats us, honestly. You're asking the wrong guys because we've been asking that question for a couple months.
Yeah, I mean, excuse me. Similar to how I feel about running backs, I'm not a huge proponent of the fullback position in general. But if you have one on your roster, why not use him? And you have what was considered like one of the better, if not the best in football. Okay, wait, no, Kyle Juszczyk of San Fran is the best. But one of the better ones in football in Derek Watt. And I understand that he was also brought in to play special teams. But when you get down the 1 yard line, if he's on the field and it's running a route in the slot, as opposed to lined up right behind Ben Roethlisberger and in front of a guy like Benny Snell, I have no idea why he's on this roster. I think that he was pretty much just brought in here to get a sideline view of TJ Watt's dominance.
Honestly, I agree with you. You look at his snap count, and obviously with the way the Steelers run the offense, he's not going to have a huge amount of snaps on this team. But the most snaps he had was last week against Jacksonville. He had 11, which is 14% of the snaps. This past week he had 4, which one of those included the run play or the passing play that he didn't get thrown to. And I've said this whole time, if you're going to have a fullback and one that you think can be good, if you're down inside the 5, why are you running these fancy like sweep plays or anything like that? Like line up in the I formation and just run it down the gut. I mean, see if it works. Because I don't think they've even tried that once.
And yesterday you were playing a Ravens team that was depleted on the defensive line. Like they should have been taking advantage of that all day. And they could have set the tone early by running that ball down their throat right there. And they didn't and decided to throw the ball on 4th and goal and threw it to nobody, really.
Yeah, so, and I mean, he does play special teams. I'll give him that. Like, he does average about 73% of the special team snaps. He's got a few tackles, like 4 or 5 tackles. He has a forced fumble. But still, if you're paying a guy to play special teams and you're paying him $3.4 million, that just doesn't add up. A special teams guy, no matter how good they are, is not worth that money.
No. And I get that, we were looking, it was kind of a way to replace Tyler Medikevich and Rosie Nix in one move. But, to this point, it's just on offense, it hasn't been what we saw with Rosie Nix. Like, I don't know what Rosie Nix's snap counts look like here, but we both said the Steelers run the ball best when it's behind a fullback. And again, I'm completely fine when we go 5 wide, let Ben do his thing. But every once in a while, you got to mix it up when that's not working and be able to run the ball, especially again against teams like Baltimore, who were so depleted on the defensive line yesterday. That should have been their focus, not Ben throwing the ball 51 times.
And honestly, I would be so happy if we ran behind a fullback for once in our life, because I hate shotgun runs. I hate them with a passion. I do not understand why you decide to run the ball out of the shotgun whenever you're automatically setting yourself up 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage to hand out the ball. At least
and they're always going the opposite direction of where they're starting.
I know. I don't get it. It makes me so frustrated when I watch it. I mean, most of the time it doesn't even work. Shotgun runs, at least for the Steelers team, has not worked that well. So I do not understand why they keep running it. I mean, there's a lot of plays I don't understand why they keep running it, but one of those shotgun runs, I hate them.
Well, we've gotten a steady dose of them, so I wouldn't expect to see anything different anytime soon.
Oh, I don't either. I expect the same thing week to week from the play calling, and I don't even understand why people still get frustrated at this point. You know what's going to happen. You know what you're going to expect and see, so why even let it bother your mood?
That's why now I just tweet that picture of Peter Griffin with the Denny's thing that looks like Randy Fichtner. But yeah, I think that's about it, unless you got anything else.
No. I'm just excited to watch more football and excited that BYU has a game this weekend. We didn't bring up BYU. I had to.
They got that game scheduled with Coastal Carolina too. So
yeah, very exciting.
Okay, but yeah, I think that's about it. Next week on our Steelers show, we're going to have Ryan Denon, who is our guy from Crowworthy, who brought us on to the network on. We're going to talk some Steelers. We're going to wrap up talking about the Rocking Around the 412 mission. Obviously, he's played a big role in that, so we're excited to bring him on, talk a little bit about that with you guys. To touch on it, again, we only have a couple more shows before this thing wraps up. So you guys probably know the mission by now. I talk about it every single week, but essentially we are providing Christmas. Families in our area, every single dollar that gets donated to us goes to these families. And if you donate at least $20 to the cause, you're eligible to win some prizes, such as we got a James Conner jersey, a Jack Ham autographed pylon, a Minkah Fitzpatrick signed jersey, a Juju Smith-Schuster signed football, Chase Claypool autographed photo from scoring his first touchdown, Brian Russ Puck, Joe Musgrove baseballs, Benny Snell autographed photo. Donnie is buying somebody a hoodie or t-shirt, whatever they want, from the Around the 412 merch store. So that's a prize as well. That might be it.
Speaking of the merch store, if you buy merch, Crowworthy is donating the proceeds of that to the foundation.
Yeah. And we've already, I want to, make the announcement on here. I've already tweeted about it, but we've already passed what we've done in previous years. To this point, we're going to raise over $4,000 this year, which is unbelievable to me that we have done that. And that's all you guys, really. I mean, again, we buy, the stuff for the prizes and stuff like that, but you guys are the ones that donate to these families, and it's unbelievable. We're going to be able to provide Christmas for like 5 families, maybe 6. We don't know. We still have the donations coming in. So don't know what we're going to end up with as the total, but to do this has just been unbelievable. It's humbling. It's amazing that you guys, want to be involved in this, and, everybody that's donated, over 50 people donating, by the way, just know that you are part of something much bigger than any of us individually. And, you can feel good about what you're doing, because it is really a special thing. And I think that we can both attest to that, doing this mission now for a couple years, seeing the reactions of these families and stuff when they are provided with a Christmas that they would have never have had otherwise.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. We've been very grateful for the way that we were raised. So we just wanted to give back to these families. It's awesome to see. And to people that will still want to donate, even if you can't donate the $20 to be eligible, it doesn't even matter. If you feel like donating, and even if it's just like $1, it doesn't matter. We will take anything. It all goes to these families. And we said it multiple times. I just want to reiterate, none of the money that you donate goes to the prizes. It all goes to the families. The money that comes from the prizes, it's from us.
Yeah, the
So
prize already
don't
bought.
worry.
So.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
Yeah, the prizes have been bought way before we even started to really bring in any type of money. So, but a lot of stuff's actually been bought. If I wanted to move my webcam around, which I don't, I'm looking at it all right now in my basement in these Amazon boxes. So, with 2020 being what 2020 is, most of it's been done through Amazon. So I'm pretty much done shopping for a lot of the families. But like I said, I think we're gonna be able to do at least 2 more families to this point. So we're looking at 5, potentially 6, but for sure 5. So
crazy because we did 3 last year.
Huh?
It's just crazy because we only did 3 last year, and we
did 3 last year, and it was less money, I think, per family as well. So yeah, it's definitely been a crazy year, and think about that too. Like in 2020, with people being as financially, strapped as they are, for people to show up like this for this mission, it's been unbelievable.
It is. I mean,
can't say enough about everybody that watches.
I literally don't know what to say a lot of the time, so it just kind of leaves me speechless.
But anyways, yeah, you can still get involved. I know that they're running that until the 15th, actually, where if you buy a piece of merch, it's going to go to us. So I had said that the 12th was going to be the cutoff date because I know Tyler's going on vacation somewhere around that point. So I don't know exactly when we're going to be able to. When do you leave?
I leave the 13th.
Okay.
So that's I'm gone the 13th. I get home the 22nd.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, we'll figure it out. But either way, I know that we're getting the money
around that weekend, like around that time, 13th, 14th, 15th. I would say, like that's probably when the donations will stop. But I mean, you still have a week and a half at least, so keep them coming.
Absolutely. I wish I could give everybody a special shout out, but again, there's been 50 plus people that have donated to this thing. So everybody that has donated, they know that they've donated. I know that they don't need, the praise for doing so, but we can't thank you enough. And again, you're part of something that is much bigger than any one of us individually. Christian Circle is one of the people that donated. He runs Keats Barbershop. Keats Barbershop is an old-fashioned barbershop. It's located at 180 Brighton Avenue in Rochester, PA. He's open 11 to 7 Tuesday through Friday and 9 to 4 on Saturday. Every Tuesday is $5 off for military personnel, first responders, and nurses. So big shout out to everybody once again. We will see you next week when we are with Ryan Dennett of Crowworthy. So thanks for listening to Around the 412. This has been a presentation of Crowworthy. Winners are serving winners coast to coast with sports, gambling, fantasy, and more. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Around the 412. Follow them at Crowworthy. Visit the Pittsburgh City page at crowworthy.com for podcasts such as this one, blogs, what your boy's about to start writing for, and more. Till next time.